Hello, everyone, and welcome to Every Horror Movie on Netflix, the podcast where we watch, review, and discuss every horror movie on Netflix. I am one of your hosts, Allison with an I, and joined by Patrick.
Hello.
And Allison with a Y.
Hey.
Hey, y'all. So this week was my pick, and we're going to be talking about a movie called The Watchers. The Watchers is the directorial debut of M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, Ishana Night Shyamalan. Fun fact. There are sticks, so by the classic Iman definition, this is definitely folk horror. The story is set in Ireland, and it follows a young woman named Mina, played by Dakota Fanning, who is assigned to deliver a parrot from her work, a pet shop in Galway, to a zoo in Belfast. Along the way, she has a bunch of mishaps. Her car breaks down in a spoopy forest, and a woman named Madeline ushers her into a strange house in the woods where she claims Mina will be safe. There, Mina meets two other inhabitants of the house, Daniel and Kira. Madeline explains that this house is known as the Coop, and it's designed to keep them all safe from mysterious nocturnal creatures in the woods called Watchers. The Coop has a one-way mirror that allows the Watchers to, watch the Coop's inhabitants at night. Madeline tells Mina they must keep the Watchers entertained and not leave the Coop at night or investigate the Watchers' underground burrows. And the forest is surrounded by signs marking points of no return, beyond which the Coop's residents must not venture because they'll be unable to make it home by nightfall. Madeline attempts to navigate these strange new circumstances and figure out the true nature of the Watchers.
So Allison with an I, why did you pick this movie for us? What stood out to you about this one?
I'm trying not to think too much about my picks, right? Because we get a pick every 3 weeks. Every fourth week, we do a horror catch-up. So I'm trying to get into the habit of just, that looks like something. Let's
just
pick
shooting
it.
From the hip, yeah.
Kind of shooting from the hip. I do love me some Dakota Fanning, so that was obviously appealing to me. And I saw the name Shyamalan, Night Shyamalan, and I thought, what the hell, you know? like three of those movies were good that one guy did. So this could really go either way.
That checks out.
Yeah.
On specifically just on the note of Dakota Fanning for one split second, I watched this whole movie and literally at the end said, "Oh, that was Dakota Fanning?"
I was shocked.
I had not seen her, though, since, like, Charlotte's Web days, frankly.
You're kidding.
Like, I don't know if I've seen her in anything as an adult.
But you saw her in Twilight.
Oh, right, except I also didn't realize that was her.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, so to be fair, when I saw Dakota Fanning, I got excited because I watched Ripley last year, the Netflix series that was based on the talented Mr. Ripley that was based on the book. Mm-hmm. And she was the female lead in that show. And she did, I think she got a lot of hate for her performance as that character. Yeah. I personally liked it. But I did some Redditing afterwards, as one does, and there were a lot of mixed reviews on whether she held that character well or not. So, but I saw her, I thought she's kind of a heavy hitter. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
I have nothing against Dakota Fanning. I don't know if I had seen her in a movie where I knew it was her as an adult. And so it was very much a what the fuck moment for me at the end. So, yeah, I just thought that was funny because you were like, oh, Dakota Fanning. And I was like, Dakota Fanning?
Dakota who?
Yeah, there was a difference in punctuation at the end of our Dakota Fannings, I think.
So did either of you watch Ripley?
Nope.
Mm-mm.
I wanted to, because isn't that Andrew Scott?
Correct.
Oh.
And it's set in Italy, and I know you guys have been to Italy in the last couple of years and loved it. So that was the big appeal for me, other than the fact that I love the talented Mr. Ripley. But that show had some big shoes to fill. Yeah, big shoes to fill. But Andrew Scott's a delight, so.
Oh, he's so good.
Mm.
Yeah. So back to The Watchers, I suppose. I guess first impressions, how do we think that Ishana Night Shyamalan did in her directorial debut?
I was surprised by the degree to which her directing and maybe writing reminded me of her dad, for better and maybe more worse.
Interesting.
I think you were asking more about the directing side of things, but I, particularly on the writing side, like, I got such strong, like, The Village vibes from this for a long time. It's like, you know, sort of characters locked into a socially constructed, isolated situation where it's like they're only staying there because they've been told it's dangerous not to go anywhere else. And I was curious to see how the twist and what the twist would be, because of course they're setting up for some kind of twist. The twist is not the same as The Village, I'm happy to report. We'll get into what it actually is in the spoiler room.
I wouldn't say that the twist is even like something that you would expect specifically from an M. Night Shyamalan movie. I feel like she distinguished herself in that sense.
Yeah, that's probably spoiler personally. Room chat, but yeah. But yeah, I don't know. It reminded me a lot of her dad in various ways. But I mean, all that being said, you know, accomplished. I mean, this feels professional, even if I didn't necessarily like the whole thing. It feels professional for a first-time writer-director, I think.
Yeah, I thought for a first-time writer and director, it's a pretty strong debut. I mean, I think I've seen certainly many much worse first films by directors and writers. I thought she did well. I would be curious to see where she goes from here.
Yeah, I agree. I'm trying to find how much their budget was, because obviously that has a lot to do with how professional a film is going to feel, first film or otherwise.
Yeah.
I'd have to imagine the budget was pretty big, but I agree with both of you that it felt polished, and I thought the acting was decent. I thought the story was decent. It fell apart a couple times for me, but if you didn't know this was not her first movie, you wouldn't have guessed. I wouldn't have guessed.
$30 million is the answer to your budget question.
Yeah, that's not small.
No.
It's not small, but it's not massive.
No. But I mean, I think this also doesn't call for a massive budget. It's pretty small in scope, but yeah, it's a sizable budget. It's not low budget. We'll put it that way.
So do you think that if she weren't M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, she would have been given this opportunity? So Nepo baby or not Nepo baby?
I think definitely Nepo baby to like get the quality of production and probably the quality of talent.
And the budget.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's so many good writers and storytellers whose stories will never see the light of day because they're not related to someone in the business, and that makes me sad. So it is what it is.
I don't know. I'm actually like pretty pro Nepo baby when it comes down to it. I'm like, if your parent is famous and like has some skills that maybe you even like picked up some of those skills from them, and you've got the access, I guess go for it. And like, if there's an audience for it out there, they'll get into it. You know, there are also Nepo babies whose projects have failed horrendously because they don't actually have the chops.
Right.
So I'm actually pretty pro Nepo baby. I hate it when people just shoot somebody down by saying they're a Nepo baby. And I mean, we're going to get into it with this movie. I wasn't like the biggest fan, but also I'm not going to knock her just for being M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, personally.
Yeah, I guess when you frame it that way, like it's keeping actors working and it's telling a story. So I think I'm a little less pro Nepo baby, but you make a good point.
Yeah, I'm like, if you got something to say it. And, you know, I mean, this is very like capitalist of me, I guess, but like the market will rule on if it connects with anybody, really.
Yeah.
And I mean, of course, there are people who get a more unfair shot at that market because of being related to a famous person. But I don't know. It doesn't, I guess, burn me the way it seems to burn a lot of folks.
Well, the market spoke on this, and it's got a 33% Rotten Tomatoes score, which we discussed a little bit about how that's calculated in our last episode when we talked about Call. But what did the two of you think about Dakota Fanning and the other actors that were cast in this movie?
I didn't have any issue with the acting. I thought it all felt very natural to me. I thought everybody was a competent actor. I thought Dakota Fanning did like a good job. I think they all, I'm going to say that this is going to sound pretentious, but I'm saying this as somebody who has spent most of their life performing. I appreciated it because all of the acting felt like it fit in the same universe. Sometimes you watch these films and there's so many different acting styles happening, and to me I find that really distracting, and I thought that the acting was very cohesive, and I thought that was a real strength of this film.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I guess there were no performances that like stood out to me, but everything was very serviceable and like, yeah, felt like it was in the same world.
I was pretty entranced by Madeline, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it also could have been she was just like an old Irish lady with long white hair. And that's a vibe to me.
She just gets points from you for that off the bat.
So that's who I would like to be, you know?
Oh, yeah. So as soon as she stepped on screen, I was like, that woman. What have I seen her in? You know how we love to do that game as movie watchers, like pause the movie. What have I seen this person in? Olwen for I can't pronounce this. It's French. It's not French.
It's French to you.
Fragile. It's French to me. It's Irish. Olwen Fuer. She was in a number of things. So she's a pretty well-known stage actress in Ireland. But I was like, what do I recognize her from? And it was from Mandy. She was one of the cult members in Mandy.
Yeah.
Which is like one of my favorite weirdo Nick Cage movies.
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, I have a Cheddar Goblin hat. I have a Cheddar Goblin Funko Pop. So right there with you.
So she was in Mandy. I was thrilled to see her.
I watched that movie I saw the movie in the theater with a kick-ass sound system. And then the only other time I watched it was in my house with all the lights off. I was high as hell. And I honestly don't know which experience was better. They were both incredible.
Yeah, I'll watch that movie yearly until I die. Love it.
Both ideal cinema experiences. But anyways, the watchers. That damn parrot.
Yeah. Let's talk about it.
I'm genuinely baffled by the parrot and why. We know the breed of the parrot. We talk about how it's a golden conure. It's a very distinctive looking bird, and there are so many shots of it. And I'm having trouble wrapping my head around what the intention was there, because it seems like such a choice. Like they really draw our attention to that bird, and I'm not sure why.
Oh, well, I feel like that's spoiler room territory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
There's some deeper meaning there that we can't get into yet.
Yeah, I have a strong rebuttal for that.
Okay.
Well, I just
have it's just a question.
I don't know if it's strong, but I have a rebuttal.
So these characters, they're stuck there, and now Mina is too. And they're given this story about, you're trapped here, and here's what we have to do. You have to stay in the coop. There's a double-sided mirror. And come nightfall, you have to retreat back to the coop, stand in front of the mirror, and entertain these, I don't know, aliens, monsters. What are they?
Which we don't see for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People start unraveling, as one would. And I guess that's where we get some character development and some backstory about them. But what did we think about their stories and why they were all there? Did it make sense?
I mean, to me, it all made sense in the context of, like, this is just an ancient mystical forest and weird things happen there. I mean, that's a folk legend from around all over the world of strange mystical forests. If you go to them, things act weird. Nature doesn't act the way you expect it to in modern day. Technology doesn't act the way you expect it to. Things break down, communication breaks down, and then nature has its own surprises for you. So, yeah, it made sense why they were all there. You know, it was just an accident, you know, as far as we know. And they all seem to be doing the best, being people who did not go there intentionally to live in the forest. And I think they handle it to various degrees in the ways that you would expect these characters to handle it. You know, Daniel, he's a little bit more unhinged, but he's like a young guy who probably he's a young Irish guy. Like, he probably doesn't, process his emotions like in the most healthy manner. Not to stereotype, but I think that's how he was portrayed.
Or is that, I guess, maybe only English people are football hooligans? Or is that an Irish thing?
Hooligan is, I think, an Irish thing.
Okay, all right.
Well, and Daniel's also the only male figure because there was a husband. Kiara's husband, John, left to go get help, but we see pretty early on what happens to him.
Right, we see right away.
Yeah, that's the opening sequence, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like I didn't have a super well-developed sense of how everybody got there, other than Mina, obviously. But outside of Madeline, the characters felt a little, like, incidental, which is fine because, Daniel and Kira there's just two other ones. But, yeah, I guess I didn't have the greatest sense of their backstories or how they all kind of arrived in this place. But, Madeline and Mina are the ones who matter, and the other ones are kind of accessories to their journey.
Yeah, I don't know if we ever find out how they got there besides Mina, which feels a little bit like, I don't know, plot holy.
They mention at some point, Kiara mentions what she and her husband were on their way to do when their car broke down, but I can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
She does mention where they were going.
Yeah, and I mean, it's, I suppose the specifics of how they get there aren't so important, but I think I didn't have, from the script at least, a sense of, like, who these people were necessarily in their lives outside of Mina and Madeline. And I mean, like we said, with the performances, I think you get a sense of fairly well-rounded humans from the performances and maybe not so much from the script.
I think we find out at some point that they all have some sort of trauma. And I'm trying to remember what Kiara and John, her husband's trauma was. But we do get a glimpse into, like, Mina's backstory and a little bit of Daniel's as well. They're carrying around, like, some shame with them, which I actually thought would be a bigger theme or, like, a maybe some reasoning behind how this particular group of people ended up not handpicked, but ended up together by one way or another. But we learn a little bit about Mina's backstory, and it unfolds over the film.
It's treated as almost crucial to the plot.
It is.
Like, it's like, what's the mystery going to be? Like, what happened, and how does it relate to this?
Right. Does anyone want to explain what Mina's backstory was?
Yeah. So at the beginning of the film, you find out that it had been 15 years since her mother died, and she has a sister, Lucy. Mina and Lucy are twins. So you get, like, little flashbacks throughout the film until you learn that their mother died in a car accident that Mina, as a child, I hesitate to say caused, but
contributed to, maybe.
Certainly a child would believe that it was all their fault. She distracted her mother while she was driving because she wasn't listening. And they got into an accident, and then that's how their mother died.
Yeah, she was sticking her hand out the window, and then actually, ultimate horror, maybe the scariest thing in the movie is her mom starts to roll the window up on her fingers, and they get, like, crushed. Lightly crushed.
Yeah.
And then the mom gets distracted, and they get in a crash. But frankly, the scariest part to me was just, like, getting your fingers caught in the window, because that's just an irrational fear of mine.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe slightly rational. Maybe not fully irrational.
I think there's some ration. Because, like, you have the automatic windows now where if, like, you just, like, put the button up, like, extra, it just, like, continues to go up.
Yeah.
I that freaks me out.
I was just scared because I also had a domineering mother who probably would have shut the window on my fingers to teach me a lesson when I was a child.
Oh, God. To teach me a lesson as a child, my mom kicked me out of the car because I wouldn't put my seatbelt on. And then she drove around the block and picked me back up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
Jesus.
man. Damn.
This episode is really about the horrors of our generational trauma from our mothers.
I mean, I don't recommend anybody do that, but like
The horrors of being raised by boomers.
no, I don't.
Real
Like I said,
horror.
I don't recommend anybody do that. But like, also, I was kind of a piece of shit, so like, I understand getting frustrated to the point where you're like, just get the fuck out of the car.
Allison, with a Y, I could not picture you being a piece of shit in at any age.
I am so stubborn, and I was worse as a child because I had no impulse control.
I mean, actually, it's a pretty great bit. This has so much to do with the Watchers, but the best stuff on our show always has nothing to do with the actual movie. It's actually kind of a great bit to do that to your kid. Because, I mean,
Once again, we're not recommending that.
what's actually going to happen to them while you drive around the block? Probably nothing.
Oh,
Will they be
God.
traumatized and learn their lesson? Yeah.
I wasn't.
Oh, you didn't learn your lesson?
No, I still fought with my mom over my seatbelt for years after that.
Did you think she had left you, though? Did you, like, cry?
I don't have any memory of it, but my mom
Okay.
says, like, she, like, after she kicked me out and she kept driving, she looked to my big sister and was like, oh my God, what do I do now? And my older sister was like, oh, she's your kid. And so my mom, drove back around the block and picked me up. And she said I just, like, stared the car down, like, so confident. Like, she, like, picked me up. She put me back in the car. And, like, I had no emotion about it. And she, like, strapped me in. And she was like, you don't touch that seatbelt ever again. And she said I had no emotional reaction. So maybe I'm learning that I'm a sociopath.
No.
Oh.
She just needed to
Yikes.
drive around a little bit longer to scare you just like a little bit more. It didn't.
Yeah.
The one block didn't do it.
I didn't believe her. I knew she was bluffing.
Yeah, right.
Well, Mina learns much more from her childhood lesson.
Yeah, definitely wouldn't recommend that one. That's fucked up. But
To be fair, her mom did die.
She did die. So, but she's carrying around all this shame, and the shame is like what propels her, right? Like what makes her courageous or fiercely independent. She's ignoring calls from her sister. She didn't go to her mom's 15-year memorial. And she decides that she's the guy to take this bird into uncharted territory. She just kind of seemed like she didn't have a lot to live for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair
That's
enough.
safe to say, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That felt intentional to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like she has a lot going on.
Yeah.
So we hear about these watchers, these humanoid creatures. We don't even know what they are. Nobody really knows what they are. They can't even explain them because truly no one has seen them. So we think that's in the room. So everyone's just taking Madeline's word for it. And Mina quickly realizes, like, this is what we've been doing to survive for months. You got to get locked into this room at nightfall, and then you have to entertain these things on the other side that may or may not be there. If they are there, we don't know what they are, but you have to entertain them, which was weird to me.
Yeah, that was actually one of the things that felt, I guess, not scary to me, but certainly creepy when they first kind of explained that concept for the first time. And Kira is like dancing to Carnival of the Animals to entertain the Watchers. I don't know. That was just unexpected and kind of unsettling. I appreciate
Unsettling
it.
is exactly the word that I would use for that. Yeah.
And she's not dancing like well, like not particularly proficiently. Like she's not, a super skilled dancer. She's just kind of like gently like prancing around a little bit to the music. And it raised plenty of questions in my mind. It was a curiosity stoking moment.
Yeah, I was really curious early on when I think it was like the first night, all the people in the coop are standing in front of the glass and you zoom out and you hear like this applause, like from like a large audience. I was like, what is going on? For a second, I was like, are we going to have a little bit of a Truman Show?
Yeah.
like is that where this is going? It's not where it went, but it was an interesting. I wonder if it was like an intentional misdirection a little bit. Either way, it was a creepy moment.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, definitely like non-diegetic applause in the sense that like that's not actually the Watchers making that sound, right? Like that's
I don't know.
added for an artistic flourish, I think. based on what we learn about the Watchers later in the movie.
I don't know either.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I guess maybe they're capable of clapping. We'll get into that more in the spoiler room, but they don't seem like applauders to me. It seems like
I also may have an argument for that in the
yeah.
for why it might be possible.
Yeah.
In the spoiler room.
Oh man, the Truman Show concept. I'm like, oh, better movie. I want to see the movie where they are like on the Truman Show.
Right, that would have been cool. I kept thinking, like, would I have just taken somebody's word for this? Right? Like, there were a bunch of moments where I was just like, who is just blindly following? And then, you know, we have a couple of scenes where Mina and Daniel actually break some of the rules because I kept being like, do something, right? Like, you're obeying in advance, like, do something.
Yeah.
Which actually, I kind of appreciated that they did that early on, because I thought we were going to play out this mystery about like their burrows, the Watchers' burrows. You know, we're told don't go in the holes, whatever, and they go down the burrow like, I want to say almost first half hour maybe of the movie. It's not
first half at least.
Yeah, first 45 minutes or so, and I was actually kind of glad in a way, if only because it subverted my expectation that would be like, you know, the climax of the movie is like, all right, we're gearing up, we're going down in the burrow, but no, they go early.
The burrow was creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was glad that they made that choice too, Patrick, because I think it kept the pacing going well.
Yeah.
And for people that were like me, that were like, I don't think I would just stand idly by, take some woman's word for this, and not try to do anything to survive. You know, they had like minimal food and drink. They had no source of entertainment other than a like weird 1990s VHS of like a Irish Real World episode.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck
That
was
was
that
hilarious.
about?
That was hilarious, actually. I don't know what it was about. I don't really know what its relevance was to the whole thing, but it was very funny to me.
I thought it was like a Love Island-esque thing.
Yeah.
It seemed like one of
was.
those reality dating shows.
Yeah.
But it's the same concept that
or
they're
Big
dealing
Brother.
with. Right?
Yeah.
Like you're stuck somewhere with a group of people you didn't ask for, right? Like there was parallel there.
That's true.
But I'm super glad they went down into the burrows because I needed somebody to be a rebel. Like I think I would have been.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because like Mina's only real motivation for listening to Madeline is her car's broken down and she has no idea where she is. There's just woods for miles. And so it's like, okay, I guess I'll listen to this lady who has the only shelter that I can see. But other than that, Mina is kind of like an independent thinker early on. And she's just like, yeah, I'm going to go down the fucking burrow and see what's up.
Yeah, I like that she questions things.
She's ready to get the fuck out of there.
Yeah. I liked the burrow scene a lot because, I mean, one, I thought it was very creepy. And it was really cool, like, right before the end of that scene, when that hand comes out of the dark and reaches towards Mina. Do you remember that?
Kind of.
But it's like,
I actually don't remember it either.
it's like this very pale hand with, like, 6 or 7 fingers on it.
Yeah.
And it's down in there with her.
And it's down in there with her. I don't know if she sees it, but we see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I remember. And they pull some stuff out of there that's actually really helpful. So, you know, that whole mission, albeit very dangerous, was furthering their investigation and like, how do we get out of here? Which they should all want that, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So they find like a bicycle and a camcorder, right?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. I forgot that's where they like start to get the video.
Yeah, those were like the
which
two
becomes very
major
important.
things that they pulled out of there.
Yeah.
To which Madeline is pissed, right? She's like, you're not supposed to do that. You're breaking the rules. Like, this is a delicate ecosystem, and they're only letting us survive because we follow these rules. So, I don't know. Madeline was, I had a healthy amount of skepticism toward Madeline. But then there were a lot of scenes that, like, they were designed to make you feel skeptical, but then cemented her next as, you know, the leader. And, like, she had a good heart, you know, her intentions were good.
The like trustworthy, if a little kooky elder.
Yeah.
Did this film feel like spooky throughout? Did it scare you? Like atmospherically, did it feel dreadful or spooky?
I mean, I think in the sense that like spooky forest movie feels spooky because a forest at night is spooky. Like, yeah. I don't know that it like distinguished itself in that sense from other like spooky forest movies, but sure, it had atmosphere. It had some vibes.
Yeah, I liked the vibe. I liked the atmosphere. I don't know if it like necessarily scared me, but stick me in the Irish countryside forest, like hell yeah, that's absolutely my jam.
Yeah, like the first line of the movie is a title on the screen that says "There's a forest in Northern Ireland where like no one ever goes" or something. I just looked at you and I was like, "Oh, you're already in." Like that's all you needed to hear, Allison with a Y.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed the atmosphere a lot.
I think the movie being set in Ireland was beautiful. I mean, I haven't personally been there, but it was everything that I thought Ireland would be. It was lush and rolling hills and really rich forestry and countrysides and colors and history.
Yeah.
I was curious about why Ireland, and I mean, I'm sure probably the director Shyamalan has spoken to this in interviews, but I'm just for a first time director's film, I maybe she spent a lot of time there. I'm not sure what. It was just an interesting and very specific location for. I assume she's American born writer director. Just kind of interesting territory to choose, and then also to set an American protagonist in that setting. It wasn't like, how dare she? It was just another thing where I was like, why though? Interesting choice.
Yeah, I wonder.
Once again, I feel like this is spoiler room worthy. I think I might have an answer for that.
Yeah.
Or
Maybe I
at
fell
least a
asleep for
guess.
this part.
Did you fall asleep?
I fell asleep for a few minutes in the middle.
Yeah,
And
I could see that.
I meant to go back and review the tape, but I'm looking forward to finding out, learning the answers to all my questions in the spoiler room.
I will say that this movie felt like it was creepy scary for me until a certain point, and then it stopped feeling creepy scary. And I think that's going to be more spoiler room territory. But I will say, when Mina and Madeline are nearing nightfall and they're running back to the coop, and Daniel refuses to let them in, so they have to hide out under some logs and like a tiny little shelter, and they actually see the Watchers. What did you guys think of the monsters themselves? I thought they were creepy as hell.
I liked the design. They were fairly unique looking. I think like where it bothered me was just the CG look of every monster in every CG movie, where it's just like, this doesn't have like a feel of reality to me. I guess, it has that blue-gray kind of washed out low light, which they do all that for practical reasons, but it's just, it's like, okay, I'm watching another CG critter. It's a cool looking CG critter, but it just like didn't click in my head as something that felt real, I guess.
Yeah,
I liked it.
Just like the aliens from Signs.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I could
Right?
see that. Yeah.
Which that movie held up really well. I thought that was a great movie, but it was also really one of the first of its kind, in like M. Night Shyamalan's early movie making.
Uh-huh.
But it was overly CGI'd. I rewatched that movie again like this past year with my daughter.
Allison with a Y, how did you react to the aliens? Or aliens! God damn it. The creatures, the Watchers in The Watchers.
Oh, I thought that they were very creepy. Yeah, I wouldn't want to meet them.
I mean, let's attempt to describe them, because this is an audio medium. Like they're really tall,
very tall, very thin,
skinny.
They're like skeletal in the sense of like very famished looking. They've got long, stringy, dark hair, big, like black beady eyes, long, spindly, pointy, bony
That's
fingers.
the word I was looking for. Yeah, they're always like kind of hunched up, like bent over, but you feel like you could unfold them like a paper accordion almost.
Yeah,
and they're somewhat translucent, right? Like you can see some organs, kind of.
I don't remember that, but maybe.
Okay, maybe I imagined that, but they're interesting. They're interesting looking little critters.
Also, they aren't little, though. They're so tall.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Very
They're
tall.
so, yeah,
Yes.
like, definitely inhuman tall.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm looking up pictures now, and I actually don't know where I got the translucent bit from. I don't know when or how I thought I saw an organ, but I hallucinated it, I think.
Well, I don't know how much more there is for us to share without spoiling some things. So can you guys think of anything else that you want to touch on before we get into the details of what the hell's going on?
No, we're at the point where like we're really talking around some things with these
Yeah.
watchers.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
we might as well like get to the spoiler coop.
Okay, so we have reached that point of the podcast where we rate this movie based on our unique scale of view it, cue it, or screw it. And Allison with a Y, what are your thoughts on this movie?
I think I'm going to be the outlier here. I'm going to give it a view it. I really enjoyed it. I don't think it's a perfect movie, but I think it's definitely worth a watch. I think it's a really interesting story. Part of it is just because I love the subject matter of it so much. So I was very invested in it. Once again, I'm trying not to give spoilers for the subject matter. It's one of the better films or television show or anything that I feel like deals with this subject matter.
Right, because I was just about to ask you, like, for the listeners, what do you mean by the subject matter? But it's really, we got to go to the spoiler room,
We gotta
really,
go to
to
the
say.
spoiler room.
Yeah.
So yeah, view it for me. Allison with an I, how are you feeling?
Sadly, I think this one's going to get a screw it from me. And it's kind of shocking. I've screwed 2 movies now in a row for our cast, but
That's far from a record on this show.
it's a record for me, I think. I think it was a little too much fantasy, but not enough, and a little less horror than I wanted. I appreciated, truly, as this being her first time directing a movie, I thought she did a great job. I don't know if my standards are getting higher or if this just didn't feel like my cup of tea. But I don't think I would recommend this to anybody. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. So yeah, I think it's a screw it. I feel confident about that. Patrick, what about you?
I think I'm screw it too, but it's like, I don't know. Who said you said hi screw it on our last episode, Allison with a Y. And it's like that for me where I wasn't offended by anything in this. I don't hold any like personal malice towards the movie or the filmmaker. It just kind of breezed in and breezed out of my brain and left little impression. And kind of like Allison with an I said, I can't quite see myself really recommending this to anybody. It's just very middle of the road, which I guess is where I feel bad because I'm like, well, that's cue it territory. You know, that's just like an average. But if I can't even quite get myself to that place where I'm like, yes, put it in your Netflix queue to kind of sit and maybe you watch it sometime, you know, I got to kind of go screw it. But before we go to the spoiler coop to reveal what subject matter exactly Allison with a Y is talking about, I'll encourage you, as always, to visit our broken website, everyhorrormovieonnetflix.com, that has that merch store link on it where you can get shirts and other goodies with Every Horror Movie on Netflix art on them. We also have a plethora of ways to engage with us on social media. Allison with a Y, do you want to tell folks where they can find us?
Yeah, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky at Amoncast, EHMONCAST, TikTok on Amon Podcast, EHMON PODCAST, or just Every Horror Movie on Netflix. And also, you can stream our episodes on YouTube as well. You're not going to see us, but you can hear us there too, because we know that YouTube is a popular platform for listening to podcasts as well. So if that's your preferred platform, you can catch us there.
It's also super easy to leave us shitty comments.
It's also super easy to accuse us of clickbait.
Yeah, big advantage.
And you can also join our Discord for some fun discussion with other fans and the hosts and regular guests on Discord.
And the links to the Discord and all those social platforms are in the show notes. Oh, and also leave us a review on your podcast provider of choice. We love that feedback. And it helps people find the show.
But only if it's a good review and you're not accusing us of just doing clickbait.
Exactly. Yeah, we don't troll us. We're not going to troll you back a little. Like, Chris has left the show. Those days are over. There's no more trolling.
I
Actually,
might fight you,
I
actually.
take that. Yeah, actually, all three of
We're
us
all
are
kind
such
of
fucking
fighters
trolls.
on the internet. Who are we kidding? Don't leave us shitty
Yeah.
comments or else. We've got a lot of pent up rage, so. All right, we'll see y'all in the spoiler coop where we'll talk all things The Watchers. See you soon. All right, here we are in the spoiler coop where we're going to spoil all things The Watchers and talk a little bit more about things we couldn't fully talk about before. So, biggest spoiler alert. Who wants to give it? Allison with
I'll
a Y.
do it. They're fairies, fae, changelings. Yeah, they're fae who, you know, in the probably dark ages or medieval ages were forced to go underground by the humans, who they once lived peacefully with and were almost revered as gods. But the humans cast them underground, but they still have domain over the forests, so they can kind of fuck with the people for revenge in the forest. Anyways, I love fairy lore. I love the lore about fae. I've always been into it for as long as I can remember, and I liked how this was handled.
Is this part of lore that like fairies were cast underground, or is that something just kind of created for this movie?
But it's possible.
Okay.
But I don't know if I've gotten quite to that territory. I mostly know lore about fairies, particularly how people used to accuse other people or children of being fae or changelings.
Oh.
Which is pretty there's like a horrifying history there.
So like before fairies were like cute, like Tinkerbell thing, it was not a good thing.
They were like morally neutral.
Okay.
But they were, you know.
But it was a bad thing to be accused of being one.
Yes, because people would torture you to try and get the fairy to leave you or get them to swap back, because they would accuse people of being a changeling. So a fairy child being switched for a human child. And there's records in Ireland of people being literally tortured to death after being accused of being a fairy, which is horrifying.
So very like witch hunt kind of thing.
Very reminiscent of witch hunts.
Interesting.
Yes.
Huh.
So, Allison, what made you perk up when we were talking about using Ireland as a backdrop as it relates to what we couldn't talk about subject matter wise?
Oh, I just love Celtic folklore.
Okay.
The ancientness of it. It's so rich. It's so mysterious. It's so elemental. And fairies are very elemental. And, there's like this famous castle in Ireland called Leap Castle that's considered to be like one of the most haunted places in the world, and it's also said to have been retaken by the fae. And you can like see pictures of how nature is taking it back, and it said like if people go there, like, you know, they can be cursed or harmed or whatnot. I find Irish folklore to have such richness and depth, because it's kind of like the oldest of kind of the British Isles area with deep pagan roots.
That's really cool.
So, but specifically, I was curious about, this, why Shyamalan chose Ireland in particular, and I think you said you had an answer to that before.
Oh, I think it's just because she wanted to tell a story, like a folklore-based story, is what I'm assuming.
Oh, because she started with, like, maybe the fairy thing and...
Right, or like a forest,
a
forest, like a old mysterious forest.
Yeah.
And there's so many ways that you can take that, but these humanoid kind of elementals, I think, is a really interesting place to take it. So that's where I think she started and why she chose Ireland, because it has such rich ancient kind of folklore.
I wonder why cast an American as the lead, though. Like, you have this Irish cast. It feels like Ireland. Not, again, like Allison with an eye said before, I've never been there, but it feels authentic, I guess, for the most part. And then I'm just like, well, why not put fucking, where was Saoirse?
Probably couldn't get Saoirse.
What was Saoirse doing? Why put Dakota Fanning in the midst of this? Not that I had a problem with her performance. It just was kind of a strange choice to me, I guess, to make a story for an American director, to make a story that felt very Irish and rooted in Irish folklore, but then American lead. I don't know.
Well, I think it spoke to Mina's storyline, right? She isolated herself because of her trauma. She was a total fish out of water, and that's how she wanted it to be. She was far away from home, and I don't know that would have worked. If her trauma played such a big part in the plot of this movie, it wouldn't have worked if she was, accustomed to her surroundings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
For the sake of argument.
Enough. Yeah, fair enough.
We're leaving out another big spoil, which is that Madeline is a fairy.
Yeah.
Madeline is she's technically half fairy.
She's half fairy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the way that we learn
because we find out that they can fuck.
They can fuck.
The fairies and humans can fuck.
Be
and
fucking. But I want to talk about how they figure out how to get out of this coop, because it kind of drove me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So the Watchers break the glass because they're fucking pissed that Mina and Madeline broke the rules and weren't in by nightfall. And the Watchers are like, they're coming in, and it's happening fast. And suddenly, they're knocking stuff over in the coop, the humans looking for a way out, and they find this trap door, which how the fuck has no one seen this before? It takes them to a level underground where there is fully stocked food, kitchen, games, music, beds, art, fucking, and then a lot of videotapes and recordings that were for scientific posterity.
Well, there's a researcher. There's a professor who was there. Yeah.
Who they had, the other characters other than Mina had referenced multiple times earlier in the movie. And we finally get to, quote, meet the professor through these videos. And he is he's a professor of folklore and came to the forest specifically to study the fairies. And that's how he that's why he created the coop and the bunker.
Classic, eccentric old professor character.
Yeah.
Rory Kilmartin, which is a dope
Rory
name.
Kilmartin.
Yeah, dope name.
And how does so he's married, turns out he's married to Madeline.
Mm-hmm. But
kind of.
She died.
Right.
Well, yeah, because she died.
Yeah, the real Madeline dies, and the professor had actually managed to capture and befriend a changeling. And here's one of the things about the fairies that make them so interesting. So the reason why they want to keep these people hostage is to study them, to learn how to mimic them.
Right.
They're researchers
and to become
too.
them. They're researchers too, and they want to change into these humans and potentially exist in the human world.
Right. Right.
But and Madeline died 20
years
plus
prior.
years before the events of the movie.
Yeah.
And so this changeling fairy that the professor had captured, I forget why he decides to do this. He says he's going to shoot the fairy and then himself. Mm-hmm. And I forget why he decides to do that. Is it because the fairies become too dangerous or something?
I can't remember.
I don't know. I think, but we perceive that as having happened, but it turns out that the fairy killed him, I think, right?
Correct.
That's right.
And then chose to impersonate
Madeline.
So the Madeline that we see this entire time is half fairy.
Half fairy.
So he mated with the fairy he captured.
No.
How is she half fairy? Is that really explained?
So, yes, he mentions earlier on that he came across a fairy that looked different from the others. She had shapeshifted into a little girl and she
with
had
red hair.
With red hair, and she
Yeah.
had seemed friendlier and more curious about him than the others. So he lured her, basically like befriended her, lured her in,
Right. Okay.
and to study her.
And then kind of unclear why she decides to take on the guise of his wife as opposed to him.
Yeah, I don't know. That's never explained.
Yeah. Because now I'm going down like the like rewrite the movie train of like, it would almost be more interesting if like the Madeline fairy had taken on the guise of the professor and was like, oh, hi, I'm here like researching these fairies. Like, I'll protect you from them. I know how to keep you safe, blah, blah, blah. And then you find out like it's not the professor at all. I don't know.
Right.
Choices.
Yeah. So in the bunker below the coop, they're watching these videotapes. They're getting progressively more unhinged, but they're getting closer to an escape plan, basically. And in the last video where the professor says he's going to kill himself and kill the fairy, he talks about a boat that exists, and there are markers that they need to follow, and they need to follow the way the birds fly to find this boat. So that's one moment where this fucking parrot comes into play in a ridiculous way, if you ask me. But the three women escape. Daniel gets killed, and they find their way to this boat before nightfall by this fucking parrot escaping from the cage, or she lets the parrot out of the cage and it flies with all the other birds.
Go. Yeah.
It flies with all the other birds in the forest to the boat.
Oh, is that what you were saying the significance of the
Yeah.
parrot was before? Oh, okay.
Well,
And it probably the specific breed, because it's a bright yellow, and yellow is one of the easiest colors to spot.
and parrots mimic people,
track.
right? Parrots mimic people.
Yeah.
So there's that double entendre.
Oh yeah, the parrot keeps saying like "Don't die" or something like that.
That's
because she
right.
like leaves it home alone at the beginning of the movie and is like, "Okay, I'm going out for a bit. Don't die." And the parrot's like, "Don't die, don't
Yeah, so
die."
it's another mimic like the fairies.
That's right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, they make it out, and you think it's a happy ending, and we're not even close to being done yet.
Yeah, because they go back to Professor Kilmartin's college, where his office has been
For 20 years, untouched.
miraculously preserved by his students who wanted to keep everything exactly as it was.
Not even dusty.
You can't tell me that would happen anywhere
Not
for like more than a year,
not even dusty.
maybe 5, let alone 2 decades.
And is that where they figure out, they put 2 and 2 together, that Madeline is that where Mina puts 2 and 2 together?
Yeah,
Figure out that Madeline's actually a halfling?
She finds those photographs, remember?
Yes.
And she
Yeah.
puts them in her bag. This is Mina, and she's like, I gotta go tell Kiara what's going on, that Madeline is a fairy, and that this whole thing was a trap, of hers, and she wasn't who she said she was. So she gets to Kiara's house, and this is where it got a little bit confusing. There was some mimicry going on where I was
There's
like,
a
wait,
lot,
who's who and who's what?
Well, the fairy that has been impersonating Madeline, I think, is impersonating Kira
Yes.
temporarily,
Yes.
and then Mina sees the real Kira come home and realizes that it's a fairy. And also I think at that moment realizes that Madeline has been a fairy, right? But I mean,
she definitely she learns about halflings in the office, and then kind of puts 2 and 2 together about Madeline, that
Yeah.
Madeline is a halfling.
yeah.
And this is the first time we see Madeline in her fairy form. It's big news for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Mina talks her into being a good fairy, basically.
Well, because she makes the argument that if Madeline really were like Madeline never truly fit in with the fairy because she was a halfling, and she did, while Madeline didn't know that, like, she never felt like she fit in.
Right.
Mina made the argument that like there was a reason that Madeline protected them in the forest when she didn't need to.
Right.
So Mina sees the good in Madeline, and it's kind of reflecting Mina's own journey with self-acceptance. And I've made mistakes. I've hurt people in the past, but that doesn't mean that defines who I am. And I have goodness inside of me because I have done good things. Madeline also still has goodness inside of her because she protected us too, and she didn't need to. So she kind of convinces, like,
She appealed to her humanity.
she did.
Yeah.
And it works.
It works miraculously fast. I will say.
Yeah, it didn't work for me. I am very glad it worked for you. It did not work for me.
It was like a 2-minute arm twisting, and she was like, all right, fuck it. You can live.
Yeah.
Which was fine.
I think this movie and maybe the writer-director are a little too big for a little too small for their britches, perhaps. I don't know. There's like kind of gestures at like capital T themes that either didn't work for me or felt overly, I guess, sort of heavy-handed, just like very on the nose. Yeah, I don't know. The more I like unpack this, the more I'm like, yeah. This is a little sophomoric, I guess, for me.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I think by the time we get to Kiara's house, and I think by the time Madeline flies up on the roof, I was kind of checked out. I was kind of like, this isn't doing it for me. I wish that her fairy side was a little scarier, right? Like there were just no more horror themes for me. It became not a horror movie anymore.
Fair.
Well, and interestingly, like Netflix, the little like whatever profile for this, it only lists one genre, and that's fantasy. And I think this is horror. Like it actually feels more horror than fantasy to me, but it's interesting that that's the main genre they identify it by.
That is interesting because when I picked this movie, I dropped down to the horror category.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and they put things in multiple genres.
Okay.
So yeah, but like fantasy is the main one that it's identified by if you look it up.
That makes sense. I think they could have made her fairy character costuming looked a little. I think it could have looked scarier, right? Because the Watchers were scary. She was just beautiful. Yeah. It was like she was beautiful, and I don't know. I think that would have been a through line that they could have used, but it felt like it stopped being horror for me. And I wanted it to be a little bit more all the way through.
Well, and quote unquote, Madeline's final choice in all of this is to sort of become a guardian to Mina.
Because that's what the fairies used to be, were guardians before the humans cast them underground. Well, that's what some fairies used to be, at least.
Yeah. Well, and the last thing we see is this redheaded child that was alluded to earlier in the movie standing outside Mina's house.
While Mina's reconciling with her twin sister.
Oh, right, yeah.
And explaining to her that she has a fairy godmother, essentially.
Effectively.
And then like Madeline Fairy as the redheaded child gives the camera this super creepy like Damien kind of look where I was really not sure what I was supposed to take from that ending, actually. I was like, I actually thought it had a menacing error to me. I was like, oh, is she still being stalked? And it turns out like, no, the implication, I guess, is she's being protected by the fairy now.
I just thought it was like to show clearly that this was a fairy because she looked a little off. And that was like a thing with the fairies, is that there was always something when they were trying to be like take human form. There was always something that was off. They couldn't quite always get the form right.
Yeah.
So that's what I thought. That's what I interpreted that being a nod to.
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously you read it correctly. I just like read it as almost menacing, I guess, was how it came off to me, but that's not the intention.
You know what? I mean, I this is very Chris-esque, but like what I would have loved to see, because I really like this story, and that's why I gave it a view it, even if it wasn't perfect.
Are you doing Allison rewrites the movie?
No, not quite.
Allison with a Y rewrites the movie?
I want Mike Flanagan rewrites the movie.
Ooh.
There was so much potential for emotional depth. There was a lot of setup for emotional depth. There were a lot of places that they could go. And bless them, they really did try to make this a movie with meaning. And because I'm a big softie, I did read a lot of the meaning. But I think it could have been injected even more into it, and I would love to see Mike Flanagan's interpretation of this story.
And he would have made it scarier.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd have pissed myself.
Yeah.
Well, and we started this by like checking M. Night Shyamalan as kind of a reference point, and I do think like there's plenty of her dad's DNA in this, in that like his best movies like hit you with a fucking emotional wallop.
Yeah.
Like it's heartstring tugging more than it's scary, which, as Allison and I said, like, that's maybe 3 movies at best, but still, like, that's what we love that director for. That's what he made his name on. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all with her being younger and Flanagan being, pretty defining horror voice of the moment. Like, if he was also a big inspiration for her. And I can see him oddly, like, because I complained that maybe some of this is heavy-handed, but I can actually see him making it potentially more heavy-handed, but also making it work better for me. And now I'm like weirdly obsessed with this alternate universe where Mike Flanagan made this movie.
Well, listen, if Mike Flanagan's listening, we need you to rewrite this and just make it a little bit better, and then we'll review it.
No, finish up post-production on the Book of Chuck first. Get that done, and maybe the Dark Tower miniseries, and then you can remake The Watchers.
All right, this is down the priority list, but eventually, just know that we'll wait, and we'll review when it's time.
Well, what's next on the priority list for us? Allison with a Y, I think you have the next pick.
Yeah. So our next film that we'll be watching is the 2019 film The Silence.
The Silence.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
I don't know anything about it. Here's the little blurb. With the world under attack by deadly creatures who hunt by sound, a teen and her family seek refuge outside the city and encounter a mysterious cult. So I picked this because I saw it starred Stanley Tucci and Kiernan Shipka.
Yes.
The Tooch.
The Tooch. I love the Tooch.
Same.
I really like Kiernan Shipka.
Yeah.
And then I also found out that it has Miranda Otto, who I love so much, and John Corbett.
What a cast. I mean, regardless, I'm just, even though I love like Kiernan and Miranda Otto, like, I mean, I'm just going to be fixated on the Tooch, and I might just like fucking like Bogart the conversation and talk about his Levi's jeans commercial for the entire episode, or just say like molto bene a lot of times.
Or are we rolling? Allison,
Yes.
you'll understand that. He does a TikTok cooking series where
Yes.
it's always, are we rolling? I'm so glad you picked this. I've been wanting to watch this.
Great.
Yay.
I'm excited. It was like one of those, I just decided to not think too much about it. I was flipping through and I saw the Tooch and I was like, yeah, let's do it.
Amazing. Great pick.
Well, until then, broken website, every horror movie on Netflix.com. You can get merch there. Social media, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube are Amoncast at EHMONcast. TikTok, Amon Podcast, EHMON Podcast. And link to the Discord is in the show notes. And leave us a not bullshit review.
Don't fuck around in the reviews.
Leave us a good
Don't
one.
fuck around in the reviews.
Yeah.
We'll come fuck you up.
That's a promise.
Yeah.
Well,
We're a fucking Italian and a couple of
Polacks.
Polacks. We'll fuck you up.
all right. On that note, that does it for this week's episode of Every Horror Movie on Netflix. Thanks so much for joining us. Once again, I am Allison with an I.
I'm Allison with a Y.
And I'm Patrick.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week.